have an event. It would be exceptionally frustrating if the landowners who traveled here today had to travel back because of redundant, out-of-scope questions. So once again, we're going to ask the attorneys to rein it in and use your time later at the hearing to make your arguments. Okay?
Your Honor?
If you must.
Thank you. Before we begin with Ms. Krogh, I wanted to inform you that Ms. Krogh has engaged me for the limited purpose of representing her and preserving her rights during her testimony here today.
Thank you. And I might add, it's noticed that your questions are narrow and in scope and appreciated. Good morning.
Come on.
You ready? All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
I do.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Let's do that over because I did it wrong.
That's right there.
I know. We'll get it down. All right. Go ahead and raise your right hand. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
I do.
Thank you. Please state and spell your name and provide your address for the record.
Sure. My name is Aimee Krogh, and it's AMIEEKROGH, and my address is 2381 Port Mill Road, Sergeant Bluff, Iowa, 51054.
Okay, and are the properties that we're addressing today in Woodbury?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And we labeled them H-WO -030 and 044. Would you prefer us refer to them as something else? It'd be easier for you?
I think that's as good as anything. We call it the Baker Farm, but that's just because of the heritage of it.
I get it. We can call it the Baker Farm. Okay. Can you please describe the usage, the current usage, and potential future usage of the Baker Farm?
The entire farm is farmed by my husband and our family. It's been farmed by our family for over 150 years. It is currently the oldest heritage farm in Woodbury County. We farmed it since 1864. So that's I guess the piece, if you're looking at the map, it would be on the west side, all of that, yeah, that area right there. Like I said, has been contiguous since 1864, along with this other triangular section. I have no idea why, way back in 1864, obviously why they took that side of the road. Obviously the road must have came in afterwards, but it's been that section since 1864. And as far as what its purpose is, it is row crop. That is what it is. It is corn and soybean. We do run a cow-calf operation, so we do graze it off in the fall. But it is not like it is not an alfalfa or hay ground or anything like that. It's strictly a row crop. To the east of 75, that triangular piece, the future part of it, I'm actually in the process of working with the SBA to file paperwork to make part of that triangular, right where the pipeline goes, on the corner of 235th and Highway 75, to put in a storage facility. That's...
Hold on, real quick. Is she going just...
Am I going too fast?
Are you keeping up? Slow down just a touch.
Okay, I can do that.
I got scolded the first day, so...
Okay, so the corner where 235th and Highway 75, that area in particular right there, I'm in the process of filing paperwork for a 701c loan through the SBA to actually put in a climate-controlled storage facility. If this pipeline goes through, I can't do that.
In focusing on the storage facility real quickly, beyond the 701c loan, have you procured equipment or signed contracts or?
I have not.
Okay.
I have met and spoken with the county supervisors because I will have to do some zoning for that because it's zoned agricultural right now. So to put something into there, I would have to change the zoning.
And have you begun the zoning process?
I have not. I have only had preliminary discussions with the county supervisors about the process to do such.
Okay, and can you describe, and I apologize, can you just quickly, not quickly, take your time, describe the business, the goal?
The goal is that corner of, like I said, that portion of the 18 acres. I told my husband it's my turn. I'm going to take part of the farm and do what I want with it. So that corner of the farm, is the plan in the future is to put a storage facilities for like RVs, motorhomes, climate controlled ones. To put 2 or 3 buildings in that space. That's my retirement plan. Is storage facilities.
And how big would the storage facility parcel be? The entire corner?
Well, that whole piece is 18 acres.
Okay.
On the east side of 75.
Okay.
And potentially he's told me that I can fill the whole thing. That's basically mine to play with.
Okay. Oh, great. So I just wanted to clarify. It's
my goal eventually, potentially it could be that whole side of 75.
okay. So when you said triangle, you meant the whole property, not the triangle that is just created by
the whole property.
Proposed pipeline. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. In the 2 lines that slash from due north to southeast, you said one is a road. What's the structure right next to it?
So that's railroad.
Hmm.
That's a railroad.
You know
So in order for the pipeline to go through, we had a situation where they came out and unlawfully went out and drove through our field and did bore testing on our property.
So they
Summit.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know if you meant them or the railroad. Just clarify.
Summit came out and did this, and so the people that came out there that did the core drilling, that when my husband and the sheriff met them out there, they said that they had full plans that they were going to bore underneath of the railroad. They're going to have to bore under Highway 75, and then again that street that is just on the triangular piece up to the north. You see a county road that heads back east, that it crosses over there. They're going to have to bore underneath that road. That's 235th Street.
Thank you.
That's what they told us their plans were.
In terms of the SBA loan, the 701C, you said you've begun that process. Mm-hmm. Is the property ineligible for a 701C if there is a pipeline beneath it?
I've been told that if there's a pipeline underneath it, I can't build a structure on it, right? So I would have to obviously avoid wherever they put the pipeline to put it on. Okay. They have not told me, the SBA has not disqualified my loan because of that, but I honestly haven't disclosed that there's going to be a pipeline going through it because I don't want a pipeline going through it.
Sure. So it's the presence of the structure above and the easement that's the
yes.
not making you ineligible for a 701C.
Not at this time.
Okay.
No. If I disclose, if there is an easement put into place, I'm sure that that's going to have a different output. Okay. The other thing I would note is to the north of 235th, it's not my property, but that little jaunt of where the pipeline is going through, and then you see it going further north. That's the Ivner farm, and they're currently in the process of subdividing that for residential development.
Okay.
So that's happening now. Okay.
Thank you. Well, and I appreciate that information.
Right.
So we'll focus on your parcel right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to know. So on your parcel, other than the railroad right-of-way, are there any other transmission lines, gas lines, tile, buried infrastructure?
There's not tile, but there are 4 easements on the property. Throughout there, there's one with U.S. Sprint Communications, AT&T, Lumen Technologies, which is used to be Northwestern Bell, and then Mid-American Energy. It was originally filed as Iowa Public Power back in the day, but now it's Mid-American Energy because there's power transmission lines that go over the area. where they're talking about putting the white line of the pipeline, they're going to be interfering with Mid-America power poles. So I don't know who's moving those.
It doesn't appear at this point there are buildings or structures on the property.
There's not, but within, I was just going over it, within a half mile from here, like, or with less than a mile to the north, my mother-in-law is there.
Okay.
You're going to see that, like, I don't know if I can make this thing work. But I'm not good with the pointer. But up to the left, you'll go down further, further down, right there. That's my mother-in-law's house, right there. And then you can see in another red area, just, that's Godfredson's property. They live there. So we don't have structures, but within half a mile, there are structures.
It looks like at least 6, 7, 8 acres within a half mile. Okay. So other than the railroad and in Mid-Am, unless the Mid-Am is in the right of way, are there any other third-party easements on the property?
Telecommunications, like I said, U.S. Sprint and AT&T, they're on the east side of 75, the triangular piece, as I call it. There is fiber lines.
Okay. Are there any other features or conditions that might not be readily apparent and that might affect or be affected by the proposed project?
Other than that, it's just farm ground. It's, it's loamy soil. It's some of the best soil in Woodbury County. It has a 200 bushel AC8, rating. It's some of the best in the county. So when they go to disturb this, we're going to have a mess. It's going to take at least 10 years for it to be put back to its, the compaction. You've heard it from like multiple other people here this morning. But structures, or we don't have tiling, or there's not a waterway, or no CRP on it. It's farm ground.
Okay, can you describe any specific concerns you may have, and any recommendation you may have for the board to address your concerns?
It's the same concerns that everybody has had here this morning. I mean, it's farm ground. It's been here in our family for over 150 years. It's literally the oldest farm in Woodbury County. Documented, that's still family owned. It's our ground. I was a little concerned earlier when you spoke and you said that non-intervenor landowners necessarily were just witnesses, that we didn't really have rights. I have rights to this. My family's owned this for 150 years. So that's my problem with this. We don't want to do it. My son is in college right now for ag business and animal science so that he can come home and farm this ground. He's going to be the 6th generation farming this ground. You take that farm ground away, you give this easement to them, that's a problem. It's not theirs to take. It's not yours to let them take. It's ours. It's been there for 150 years. I shouldn't be here today fighting or having this discussion with you. It's our ground. How would you guys feel if we came to you and said, we're going to take your house, or we're going to condemn it, or we're going to take away your livelihood? That's my concern. It's my home. It's my farm. 5 generations back, I've farmed this ground. That's a problem.
Do you recommend an alternative route for the proposed line? And if so, can you describe that route and theoretical advantages and disadvantages?
No, I don't have an alternative for them.
Okay. Thank you. The parties have questions for Ms. Krogh? Well, go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Taylor.
Pretty well by the time this is over.
Yes, we will.
My name's Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. This SBA loan I wasn't quite sure how far along you were with that process,
We've just started the application process.
but you do absolutely intend
Absolutely,
to do this,
yes,
as far
for
as,
that section.
right. So it's not just kind of a hypothetical, maybe sometime in the future thing.
No.
The farm ground, you grow corn and beans on there,
Mm-hmm.
and what do you believe would be the impact of that farm ground if the pipeline is installed?
I'm not the farmer in the family. My husband's the farmer in the family. But I will tell you what he believes, that once this is compacted, once the damage is done, at a minimum, it is 10 to 12 years before it is, in the usable state that it is today. And more than likely, it'll never be the same. You're talking about erosion. You're talking about ruts. My family, my husband does a minimal tilling operation. We don't do a full-on till, chop it up every, he's not out there chisel plowing it he just doesn't do that. And now, and that's why we have some of the best crops in the area. And so now this section going straight across the heart of the farm is basically going to be at a loss for us. And like what you've heard everybody else say, they have the right to sell it to whoever. It's not theirs to have.
And the pipeline does go right across the middle of the
Right
island.
through the center of it. And we own, it's not in the pipeline, but we own all the way to the north and we own to the south. So it's literally just going through a section. I mean, it's...
You see, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And the green areas, it's not affected up there to the north of them. That's our farm too. You see up here, you see up there. Those are our farms.
And you say you use no-till?
Yes.
Does that present any special problems in terms of the pipeline going through there?
My husband would obviously have to, that particular area, it's going to be compacted. So now he's going to have to do things like tillage, heavy tillage. It's not that he does a completely no-till, it's minimal. He does not go out in the fall and rip it and chisel it up. You obviously disc it up before you plant it. Those kinds of minimal things. But in that particular area, now he's going to have to implement other measures for it to be usable.
You said there were Mid-American power lines through there?
Yes, there's Mid-American power lines. They run parallel to the railway that they're going to have to cross by Highway 75. And there are power poles. I don't know exactly where they're located, but there are large utility power poles also.
Okay. So are they transmission lines rather than distribution lines, or do you know?
They're the very large transmission, like huge ones, because it leads back into CF Industries, which is further west towards the river.
Well, how far are you from CF Industries?
I would say less than 4 or 5 miles.
Okay.
It's on the other side of the interstate. This is on what would be the east side of the interstate. On the west side of the interstate is CF Industries, close to the Missouri River.
Is it Interstate 29?
Yes.
Okay. And the power poles are on a triangular area, is that correct?
No, there's power lines. The main power lines are on what would be the west side of Highway 75. They run parallel by the railroad. That's okay. The railroad there, that two lines that run parallel to each other.
Okay. And did you indicate that you thought the pipeline might impact those power lines or vice versa?
I'm not sure. They're gonna have to go underneath where they are. I mean, obviously, Mid-America has an easement for a reason for those power poles there. I know they're definitely going to have to deal with the railroad because they're going to bore right under the railroad, and they're going to bore right under Highway 75. So they're going to have to deal with both of those areas. If anybody knows the railroad, that's not fun to deal with them.
Are you concerned about a breakage or a rupture in the pipeline?
Absolutely. You saw where my mother-in-law lives. This property is 1 mile from Sergeant Bluff city limits. They don't have a regular fire department. They have a volunteer fire department, same as everybody else has talked up here. We would depend on Sergeant Bluff and Salix, which again is a volunteer fire department rescue service, to come up and help. Absolutely. There's 5 houses. When you zoom out, you're going to see, various houses in that area. There's 5 acreages in that area. You see, Godfredson's up there. My mother-in-law's up there. You see the other Godfredson farm to the south. My sister-in-law lives just to the north of this on the east side, that triangular piece. That's my sister-in-law. So, yeah, this thing goes, we're going to have a problem. Honestly, I'm a little bit worried about if this thing were to go and where it heads back west across I-29. On the other side, it doesn't have anything to do with this part where I am, but head back west where it comes in, it's going right by CF Industries. This thing blows, that thing blows, you can say goodbye to Sergeant Bluff the whole time.
Has the summit given you any information about the zone of risk, so to speak?
I find it very interesting that when the folks that approached us, their agents that came out and started giving us offers over the last 2 years, it was wonderful. It was not going to hurt anything. It was going to be buried. We've had anything from 8-inch pipe, 12-inch pipe, 16-inch pipe. Told us, I think on that map that you guys showed earlier, flashed up, it said Woodbury County in our area was a 12-inch pipe. The paperwork that I have from them says 16. Has started off at 8, went to 16, what have you. So, yeah, there's problems all over this.
You talked about your conversations with some land agents.
Mm-hmm.
How often have you talked to any Summit land agents?
We've talked to 3. They switched, they've switched companies. We're now on the 3rd one. The last one we talked to was in September of 2022.
And can you describe those conversations?
The first conversations that we had with them, probably back in 2021, were not, fruitful, as you would say. My husband met them at the entrance to our place and asked them to leave. We ended up having conversations with them over the last 2 years. Every time they come, it's a different story. It's more money, less money, different. Like I said, we've had 3 different sizes of pipe. I will tell you that when I received the paperwork of these proceedings, which was in July of this year, I reached back out to the latest agent, and I said, what gives? And he said that he had been instructed by Carbon Summit to no longer talk to us. They were being called back into their field office, and that he couldn't talk to me anymore. And that's the last communications I've had with him.
And that was how long ago?
That was a matter of about 3 weeks ago.
But you tried to reach out to Summit.
I tried to reach out to their agent, not to their Summit.
Right.
Not to Summit. Right. They have third-party agents that come out. It's not actually Summit Carbon people that come out.
Sure. So how did you feel about the efforts that the Summit made to either talk to you or not talk to you?
What kind of, quite honestly, ticked us off when they came out and were doing core samples without permission. They literally drove through our farm. They did, I will say for the record, that after we involved the authorities, they did pay us for damages for what they did. They literally drove through our cornfield and went out there and did sampling. So we did receive, I can't remember the exact amount, it was less than $10,000 for the damage they did. So the communication really kind of sucks, honestly.
What kind of damage did they do when they surveyed?
They took ATVs and drove out through the cornfield, and they cut a fence, and they drove through the fence.
Was there any corn in the field at that time?
Yes, there was.
What did it do to the corn?
Drove over it.
I assume that corn was...
It was in June. It was well before harvest time. They literally drove over the field, cut the fence, took their ATVs and drove in and did core samples.
And then who did you contact to try to get damages?
The land agent, that would have been, his name was Bob Bess. He was one of their land agents. It was 2 land agents ago.
So why have you not signed an easement?
It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear. This is my property. This is my family's property. We farm this ground. We don't want it sold. We don't want it sold off to anyone. 6 generations farm this ground. We've been stewards of this ground. It's our livelihood. It's our occupation. We absolutely do not want to sell. We do not want anything else running through it. It would, it's one thing that we have Mid-America or UP, the railroad running through, the easement area. I mean, the railroad was there for, probably close to 100 years. Mid-America brings power, a utility power. This is a for-profit operation that wants to run through my family's farm ground for their own benefit. It's not theirs to do. It's ours. We don't want them there. We want to continue farming it. We don't want our livelihood disturbed because they want to profit by putting a pipeline through it.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Appreciate it. No? Okay. Mr. Williams.
Thank you. I'd like to get into just a few more specifics about the easement and why you won't sign it. You highlighted some things that were consistent with earlier testimony where you just felt that this land essentially was yours, you didn't want it taken from you. My questions are more directed at the easement language. Were you presented with easement language at some point, other than just general dollar amounts?
Yes, we were presented with an offer that talked about, that they could go up to 50 feet on either side, and that how far deep that they could bury the pipeline. Yeah, it's the same as that we've had from other witnesses, the same boilerplate easement that they've sent to all of us.
Did that easement language strike you as something that created risk for this property as opposed to providing some benefit to you?
There's no benefit.
Okay. No, but specifically as to risk, did you see a risk of potential? You mentioned compaction risk, for example.
Yes, there's compaction risk, and honestly, the letter that we received to come here today, the first paragraph says that they've filed for eminent domain to bury a hazardous pipeline. What does the word hazardous mean to you? Risk.
Have you, with the compaction, have you had personal experience, or your husband had personal experience with dealing with compaction issues on property?
Yes.
And what are how long does it take to resolve compaction issues?
Mr. Williams, this question has already been asked and answered by Mr. Taylor.
No, it hasn't. It has not.
Board Member Burns has as much authority to make a decision on what has and hasn't been answered as I do, so you don't need to look at me.
I don't know what, I understand the commentary, but there's no objection, so what is the board willing to sustain them? Is she objecting? What is she doing?
I think we're simply asking you to keep the questions to a very tight scope as it relates to where the proposed project could be placed, theoretically, if it's approved, on her property. And that's it. So go ahead and confine it to exactly what the testimony was intended for by the board. Obviously, with landowners, we're going to let landowners go. Right? But in terms of our attorney friends in the room, we're going to ask you that you confine your questions, comments, statements to the original board order, which was the actual siting on the property.
There has been, I'll try it this way, there has been compaction in corners of the property when Mid-America comes in, as an example. They have to service those power poles, right? So they drive trucks in there to service those power poles. You can very obviously see that the crop grows less where that compaction happens. And it has been like that for years. Where they drive in there to change a transmission line or something like that, there's compaction from those vehicles. The crop suffers in those vehicles, in that space.
Sorry. And in your easement agreement that was proposed to you for the pipeline running across your property, do you believe that it addresses the concerns that compaction could cause on your property by virtue of a pipeline of this magnitude being present?
No.
Why?
They're only, in the easement that they've given us, they're only talking about what's going to happen for 3 years. And this compaction of the level that they're going to do, they're going to totally rip up the ground, put a pipeline in it, and then bury it back up. That is going to take 10, 20 years for it to be in the state that it's in, and it is in today. And it's never going to be in the state that it is in today. And all they put in the easement is that they're going to just pay for things for up to 3 years. That's what's in writing.
All right. And you mentioned also, obviously, you have a railroad on there and the pipeline is going to run under that at some point. Do you have any concerns that you might be unnecessarily entangled in a dispute between the pipeline company and the railroad company regarding?
Have you ever dealt with the railroad? Because I have, and they suck. So yes, this is going to be a mess to deal with them.
Specifically, I'm directing my question towards if there's a dispute arises between those two entities by virtue of you being the landowner or the pipeline and the railroad company intersecting. Do you feel like you'll become unnecessarily entangled as a result?
I absolutely do. And the next question I'll be asked is, does the railroad now, because of where this is going to go, do they want to move some kind of an entrance into the property? Yeah, I'm going to be impacted for sure.
And what you mean by that, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the railroad company will come back to you to potentially try to renegotiate the terms of the easement that they have over your property.
Absolutely.
And as a result, you might be further entangled in additional litigation that might cost money for you.
Absolutely.
And do you have any indication from what Summit is attempting to do that Summit will cover the costs of that issue?
No.
Direction.
Yeah. I don't believe there's anything in that easement.
Hold on,
We gotta wait on that.
just hold on real quick.
Okay.
Go ahead and state your objection.
And I probably should have objected even sooner, but I mean, this is so speculative, and there's just no facts and evidence that we won't be able to agree with UP, that any disagreement will end up in litigation, that the landowner will somehow be dragged into that litigation. We are now 3-4 levels removed from anything that is a reasonable factual basis for this line of questioning.
These are risks associated with the land. I'm sticking to the land as the board instructed. This is a risk that she will have to deal with down the line. And it relates to, and I tied it into the easement agreement as well.
So, hold on. Ms. Ryan?
Thank you. Yes, if we're discussing the easements and the agreements, all of those impacts are things that the witness should be able to testify about. And what fears and questions she has are issues that are very relevant to how this is going to impact her land.
Did you have a reply, Mr. Dubinsky?
I do, Your Honor. The problem is that the lawyer is putting the risks out there, not the witness, and there's nothing in the easement about our relationship with Union Pacific.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak?
Not yet.
Okay.
But I'm going to let you answer the question because you're a landowner.
Right.
So, okay. Look, we are getting pretty speculative here. Okay, I appreciate that you've reined it in and are talking about the land and the easement. Okay, but we're getting pretty creative with our scenarios and getting a little bit beyond likely foreseeable scenarios. So we're going to go ahead and answer this question, and then let's try to keep this tight. So, Ms. Krogh, if you want to go ahead.
If I make sure I have your question, because not everybody's talked so many times.
Why don't you go ahead and
Yeah,
repeat your
just
question, and don't worry about rephrasing it. Just go with the question you had, and we'll roll.
So obviously, we're talking about the railroad on your property.
Right.
And obviously, the pipeline wants to go underneath that railroad line, as shown in the picture that's right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, at this point,
Yes,
Do
I
you
have.
have concerns that you might be unnecessarily entangled in a dispute by virtue of the fact that you're a landowner where both these easements would be intersecting with one another?
Yes.
How so?
I feel that the rail may come back to us and ask to move one way or the other. I feel that there's going to be a fight, and if anybody deals with the railroad, they don't move very often. The rail seems to win everything. I'm on a local school board. We fought for 2 years just to get an extra entrance into the town across the railroad. So I know how it is to deal with a railroad. And so if the railroad's not going to give up, odds are that Summit might have to move the pipeline, and then we got to go through this whole mess all over again. Absolutely.
With these risks in mind that are unique to your particular property, as opposed to the ones that we've discussed here earlier with other witnesses that I'm sure you've heard, do you see the easement agreement and its terms contained within to be nothing other than a complete benefit to Summit and no upside to you?
There's absolutely no benefit for us. Absolutely none.
And as a result, would it be your opinion that this project does not serve the public necessity or convenience?
It is absolutely a private entity trying to profit. There's no benefit for any of us.
All right, thank you. No further
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you. Ms. Ryan?
Just a quick point of clarification. I do have some additional issues for Ms. Krogh, but as part of the conversations that we've had over the last couple of days, one issue that has arisen has been the rights of attorneys to question witnesses following any additional questions by other board members. And since this witness is represented by an attorney, I wanted to clarify that I would be able to ask her questions following any additional questions from the board.
I thought you might ask that. So we're in a bit of an uncharted territory in this situation. And so what I would prefer to do after you've stated it, if you'd like to follow up to this before we go to lunch, that'd be great. But what I would like to do is discuss that with the board, let you know as soon as we know what's going to happen, and then we will come back on the record and explain right after lunch what our decision is. And so if you'd like to make a statement prior to breaking for lunch, I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Okay. Well, I recognize this is uncharted territory, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear about how the procedure was going to go, I will follow up with the additional questions and issues I have whenever the board tells me it's appropriate to do so.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We will take a 45. Oh, I'm sorry. Board Member Burns? Yeah, but we need. That's why we're taking lunch. Okay, so we will take a quick 45-minute lunch. I wish it was an hour lunch. Maybe in the future, we'll run a little more on track. We'll be able to do that. I do appreciate what is a very clear effort from the attorneys with the last witness to tighten it up. And I think we can probably do just a little bit better. But Ms. Krogh, you are still under oath. So we're going to go to lunch, and we will be back here in 45 minutes, and we will finish up.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.